Good morning, everybody. I'm Kirk Harrison. I'm the CEO of Black Prince Trust, and on behalf of all of the people at the Trust, the Violence Reduction Unit and the Mayor's Office, I just wanted to welcome you all to the Black Prince Trust Community Hub. Just by a little bit of background, I've been kindly asked just to give a few minutes about the Trust, because I think as you'll learn, it's quite an important place in terms of what we're trying to achieve. You're actually sitting in what was the old sports hall of Lillian Bayliss Old School, which is on this site. Some of you here might remember it. It was built in the 1960s and it occupied a 5-acre site all around us. In the early 2000s, it was deemed obsolete, and a new school, Lillian Bayliss Technology School, was built just up the road. And this actually, because it was a listed building, the school lay empty for a number of years. But an amazing thing happened. It became a sort of unofficial community hub, and a lot of different charities, social groups started using the facilities at the school, not only the classrooms, but also the sports facilities to actually do a lot of work. By 2010, Lambeth, who owned the site, had decided to sell half the site for housing development, but the other half, very thankfully, and thanks to Liv Peck, who was very much involved in it, Lambeth agreed to create a community hub, here what we have now. So what we have is a 2.5-acre site. Lambeth gave the Trust a 125-year head lease to run the site as a community hub. And that was an amazing decision by Lambeth in doing that, and thanks to Lib for being involved in that. So BPT as a charity was founded to be the counterparty to that head lease, and we also have a community services agreement in place with the council whereby we agree to deliver social impact. So what we have here, and while you're here, if you get a chance to look around afterwards, please do so. We have 3 football pitches, 2 multi-sport pitches, a trim trail, an athletics track. We have an admin building where we've got offices for our charity partners and a community cafe. And we have the sports hall, which I think you'll agree is a pretty impressive building. We have 2 basketball courts. We have an amazing boxing gym. We have a strongman gym. And we have a training and education room. So we think we've got fantastic facilities here. So what the Trust does is manage these facilities 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, 350 days a year, which is a challenge in itself, as you can imagine. But we provide with our partners a range of community programs, largely based around sport and physical activity. So we call ourselves a Sport for Development Hub, and that whole ethos is using sport to engage people to come and get engaged, and then from that we aim to deliver social impact. So we've driven the partnership model, and because we recognise that's the best way to do that. With our partners, we've drawn up what we call social impact strands, and I won't bore you with all of those, it's all on our website, but just to give you an example, it's things like inclusion, equality and diversity, health and well-being, which obviously covers physical and mental health, education and the like. So since 2015, really, we've really developed the partnership model. We've got a whole range of partners. I think we've got currently about 25 partners who either deliver on the site or off the site. Got some amazing facilities partners that help us keep this place in good shape. People like Sport England, London Marathon Trust, Nike, who did this court for us recently, and obviously the council. So between 2015 and 2019, we basically increased usage at the site from it used to be about 40,000 user visits a year. We currently, in 2019, did close to 200,000 user visits a year, and I think you'll all agree that's an amazing statistic, getting people down here, getting them engaged. Well over half of those visits are community-based, which is really important. We've got some great partners that have helped us fund some programs here, so City Bridge Trust, the GLA, Sport England, and again Lambeth. COVID's obviously been a huge challenge for us, as it has been for everybody here, but we managed to keep going through COVID. We were shut for a lot of it, but we did manage to host the North Lambeth Food Distribution Hub for several months in 2020, and this court was full of, some of you remember, it was full of baked beans and loaves of bread, etc., but it was an amazing effort to actually help the needy in Lambeth to be kept in food. So we've been really busy, and we're in a good place as we recover from COVID. In terms of today's agenda, youth violence and a safer London have been inherent in what the Trust is all about, and it's been in our DNA for years, so we're delighted to host this important event today. We've got a number of partners that we combine with, and what we try and do is provide both a safe and welcoming environment for people to come, but also a whole range of community programs to engage people, especially the local youth, because we all know the challenges out there. And we think if we get people down here, we can then start to drive the social impact, because I think our aim is to get people down here, and from them we can build on that. We've got some amazing partners that help us do this: the Fight for Change, Don Davis Boxing, Street Soccer, School of Hard Knocks, the Arco Academy, Three Pillars, Oasis, Lillian Bayliss. A lot of people, delighted to see them here today, but without our partners we would be half of what we do. You know, and we just very much look forward to working with the GLA. They funded an amazing programme called Changing Gears, which is coming to an end, and it's a real struggle through COVID, but that was the GLA sports unit, and Hilary and the team, thank you again for that. So we think we've got a proven track record that we can help on this agenda. Finally, as for the future, it will no doubt be a very challenging the next few years as we sort of adapt to this post-COVID world. But I think places like the Hub and the Trust and the partners we have are so important, and I think programmes like the My Ends programme are going to be so vital in helping us collectively tackle all the issues. So thanks for listening to me. If you want any more information on the Trust, we've got a website. Please contact me. We've got some leaflets and stuff outside. And if you get a chance to look around afterwards, just be happy to show you around. I'm now very pleased to hand over to Yvonne Lawson from the Godwin Lawson Foundation.
Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. And every time I get on stage, I get nervous. I don't know why, because my story, I have shared it more than 1 million times. So I'm Yvonne Lawson from the Godwin Lawson Foundation. I'm a mum, I'm a practitioner, a facilitator, and as a mum, years back, I used to hear about knife crime, and I'll stop for a moment and ponder about the families and just get on with my daily activities. I never once thought knife crime could ever hit my doorstep. To me, knife crime did happen, but it was never gonna come near me because my family just looks so ordinary. Unfortunately, in 2010, the worst happened. Every parent nightmare. There was that door knocked, and it wasn't my son. It was 3 police officers telling me that unfortunately Godwin has died, taking his last breath in Tottenham, trying to stop a fight. My worst nightmare has happened. Frustrated, traumatized, angry. What went wrong? He stepped in to stop a fight. He didn't deserve to have his life stolen away from him. I was determined to find out more about knife crime. I started to talk to Godwin's friends, going in the street to talk to his classmates, and the more I talked to them, the more determined I became. I realized that I was naive as a mum. I didn't know about the dangers that lay ahead in our streets. I was more determined to be part of the solution. I didn't have a choice at that time. Godwin Lawson Foundation was set up, firstly, in Godwin's memory, and secondly, to help others, other young people like Godwin, who had so much gift and talent, ambition, to fulfill that ambition rather than get their lives stolen away from them. And that's what we do. We encourage young people to find their gifts, to find who they are, to find their purpose. And what we do is we try and encourage them to overcome any barriers that they may be having and reach their fullest potential. We work very closely with schools because I think schools have got a role to play. I think teachers have got a role to play in terms of identifying those young people that they think may be at risk and intervening in those young people's life before it's too late. As we all know, to prevent is always better than to cure. So we are passionate about early intervention, prevention. We work with those young people. We work on those soft skills that is often so much underestimated in our community. Who are you? We work on their confidence, their leadership, their communication skills, decision-making skills. When you make good decisions, you can have good outcomes. But when you make negative decisions, you can have negative outcomes. These are things that doesn't come naturally to young people. They have to learn. And we at the Godwin Lawson Foundation are there to support those young people. Not only that, we do 6 months mentoring where we go into the schools, we sit with those young people, and we talk through challenging issues that they may be having. We also believe in the importance of working with families, and we work very closely with mothers. As a mother, I think I probably needed support. I needed a forum to talk to other mothers about challenging issues that we have. So in Haringey, we have set up mother forums where mothers could just come and talk through challenging issues. And what we do is we help them to navigate resources and navigate services that could be easily available to them. Recently, we've been really fortunate to get some funding from My Ends program. Thank you for that. And I am fortunate to be part of the Haringey consortium. We've actually called our program Home Cooked. Home Cooked meaning that we want everything to be authentic. We want young people to be the center of our delivery. Not just their voices, but we want them to be co-produce and then co-deliver. So I think having young people's voices in everything that we do is so key, is so fundamental. We can't just make policies for young people or make provisions for them and not having their voices heard. It's just so fundamental. So I'm so glad. I think I've only got 5 minutes. What we're doing is so key. I think it is important to connect with the communities, because quite often policymakers are here and the communities are here. We need to come together. We need policymakers and the community to come together. So this is good practice, and we need more of that. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing your story, Yvonne. So, my name is Sarah Oyegoke, and I am a member of the Violence Reduction Unit's Young People's Action Group. Now, I want everyone to imagine this scenario. If you want to, close your eyes and really immerse yourself into the story I'm about to tell. So, you're at a birthday party. It's getting dark outside. You're getting worried. You don't want to be home too late. You want to see your sister before she falls asleep. You have homework to do. You step outside. It's cold. You start to shiver. Out of the corner of your eye, you see a large group of people getting rowdy. You go over to see what the commotion is about. Everything is moving too fast. Your breath gets shallower. Your heart is beating faster and faster and faster. Your vision is getting blurry. Everything is spinning. You reach for your stomach to stable yourself. There's blood. Blood on your shirt, blood on your hands. You didn't deserve this. Nobody deserves this. Violence affecting young people always seems so trivial to me. It's not that I didn't care about knife crime or gang violence, I just never understood the true reality of it. I had never been close enough to violence. It's not until I heard this specific story that I was truly in shock, that I truly digested the horrors that many young people live through every day. That's why I joined the Young People's Action Group. I was sick and tired of seeing my community struggle. I was tired of seeing young black boys dying, tired of seeing young children fighting in the streets instead of doing homework or playing football. I want to work to deliver change and change the narrative surrounding violence affecting youth in London. Having the hard conversations about racism, police brutality, gang culture, and violence will allow us to uncover the systemic issues that are practically killing young people in London. That's why I believe the work that my peers and I do in the Young People's Action Group alongside the Violence Reduction Unit is vital. We have a mantra in the Young People's Action Group, which is nothing about us without us. So we believe it's really important to have a young person's voice in solutions in the policies and programs that will shape our own futures, because we believe it is imperative in reducing and stabilizing violence across London. I strongly believe early intervention and promoting positive opportunities for young people are the solutions to reducing violence in our city. And I am determined to use my voice to help bring about the change that we all want to see. So thank you so much for listening to my speech. And I would like to take this opportunity to introduce the Mayor of our city, Sadiq Khan.
Well, thank you, Sarah, not only for that introduction and your inspiring words, but for all the work you do with us to ensure young people's voices are heard. Please give a round of applause to Sarah. It's also great to have a local member of Parliament, Florence Seshalomi, here today. The leader of the council, Councillor Claire Holland, is here today, and also the representative from the London Assembly, Marina Ahmed, is here today as well. Wow. Yvonne, thank you for what you said. I know it can't be any easier today than 10 years ago to talk about what happened to your oldest son, Godwin, who, from what I've learnt, was a kind, talented and ambitious boy with so much potential. The way you use your story is so powerful, ensuring his legacy through the Godwin Lawson Foundation is a positive one, helping to keep young people safe in our city and preventing other families from having to go through the pain yours has gone through. You know, just over a week ago, Yvonne received an MBE at Windsor Castle. What you've done is incredible, as it is inspiring, and on behalf of London, I thank you once again. Also, want to thank Kirk Harrison and the Black Prince Trust. I wish I'd brought my gym kit, but don't worry, Debbie Weeks-Bernard, my Deputy Mayor, has. Thank you, Kirk, not only for hosting us today, but for the great work you and your team are doing here. This includes, as you've said, the brilliant Fight for Change initiative, which provides boxing, martial arts and fitness training to support vulnerable young Londoners from deprived communities who could be at risk of getting caught up in violence. And this is exactly the kind of initiative we need to see in other parts of London, something I'm going to talk about much more during my speech. I see reducing violence and making London safer as the single most important part of my job as mayor. There is no greater task that faces my administration, because safety is the bedrock upon which all else in our society can function and flourish. And because I know the devastating impact that violence has on victims and communities. Being the mayor of a global city like London means I'm confronted with many complicated challenges. But the issue that keeps me up most at night is the senselessness of knife crime that results in the murder of young Londoners, many just teenagers. It reminds me of what Robert Kennedy once spoke of as the mindless menace of violence that stains our lands and our lives. Every death as a result of this needless violence is an utter tragedy. It leaves lives destroyed and families grieving. It tears communities apart and fuels fear, and it deprives our city of so much talent. As a Member of Parliament and as Mayor, I've spent a lot of time with bereaved families, parents, sisters and brothers, those who've lost a child or sibling under horrific circumstances. Seeing this raw grief is absolutely heartbreaking. But I believe we have a duty to keep at the very front of our minds the true human cost of violence and to use it to drive us to work even harder to prevent more tragedy. So I want to use this speech today to speak frankly about the huge challenge we face with violence in London. It's the same challenge facing other cities in our country and other cities around the world. I want to talk about, with neither understatement nor exaggeration, some of the grim realities on the ground at the moment, and to highlight the worrying impact of the pandemic and how it's made what was already a difficult task even harder. But my main message today is not one of despair, rather a message of determination that we're redoubling our efforts to reduce violence as we recover from the pandemic, a message of reassurance that we have an extensive and expanding plan to win this battle over the days, weeks, months, and years ahead, and ultimately a message of optimism and hope. Because I believe we not only have the solutions to this complex problems, but that we collectively across London have the will, skill, and resolve to succeed in reducing violence and making our city safer for everyone. At the outset, I want to outline some context and facts, because too often this issue is oversimplified or used to score political points. So where do we really stand today, and how do we get to this point? After years of decline, serious violence involving young people in London started to rise in 2012. This coincided with the impact of government cuts being felt, what they called austerity. When I became mayor in 2016, an upward trend in violence had already been well established. The widespread public view is that violent crime has continued to rise ever since, except during the cycle of lockdowns during the pandemic. But what's not widely known is that we actually started to see a real shift in the right direction before the pandemic hit. In fact, over the last 4 years, we've seen a downward trend in the number of victims of the most serious violence under the age of 25. Knife crime for under 25s is down by 48% compared to 2017. The latest figures show that overall, the number of knife crime victims under 25 is down by 39% compared to 2019 and by 31% compared to 2018. So overall, youth violence has been going down, knife crime has been going down, and gun crime has been going down. I do not say this to distract or preempt any criticism. I do so because we clearly have a long, long way to go. It's vital that we acknowledge signs of progress so that we can learn from what's starting to work and build upon it. But we must also acknowledge the depressing reality that one stat that's not heading in the right direction is the number of teenage deaths in our city. Yes, overall, the level of knife crime is substantially decreasing, meaning fewer violent attacks, fewer victims in hospital, and fewer young offenders. But due to the increasing ferocity of the attacks, this is yet to translate into fewer teenage homicides. So the statistics paint a very complex, mixed, and evolving picture. But what's clear is that the level of violence impacting young Londoners remains far, far, far too high, and that we must redouble our efforts once again as a city. So what's the path ahead? A crucial part of the solution is always going to be to support the police, to stem the awful bloodshed, and to bear down relentlessly on offenders. That's why I commit again today to do everything in my power to ensure the police have the resources they need to do their job. And it's really good to have Commander Al Murray here today, along with other police colleagues. Over the last 5 years, we've invested more in the police than any other administration in the history of the mayoralty. And thanks to this, as well as the government agreeing to reverse some of its policing cuts, the number of police officers serving on the streets of London now stands at more than 33,000. That's the highest it's been for a decade. However, our population has increased by more than 1 million over the last decade, and crime has become more complex. So I'll continue to do everything possible to get more officers on the streets and in our communities. I'll also continue to ensure that we focus policing on the areas of London worst affected by violence, that we crack down on gangs and the drug market, which we know is a huge factor in fueling violence, and that we work in partnership with local authorities, the NHS, social services, the probation service, and others to help those being exploited by gangs. We know that we'll never be able to simply arrest our way out of the problem, and that we must, at the very least, place an equal emphasis on prevention, as Yvonne said, as well as enforcement. The old mantra rings truer today than ever, that we must be both tough on crime and tough on the complicated causes of crime. Because the truth is, we know there's a complex set of factors at play in people's lives, homes, and communities, which can alter the likelihood of someone taking the wrong path and getting involved in violence. And this includes deep-rooted and ingrained social and economic issues, like poverty and inequality, high unemployment, family breakdown, domestic violence, school exclusions, poor mental health, the lack of youth services, a sense of alienation and disaffection, systemic and structural racism, the negative impact of new forms of communication and social media, and the link between drugs, gangs, and violence. Tackling all these issues alongside good policing forms the other part of the equation. This is not just theory or anecdotal, it's backed up by the evidence. And today, we're releasing the most detailed analysis yet, which truly lays bare the extent of the link between violence and poverty, deprivation, and a whole range of other socio-economic factors. For the first time, we've built models that identify which factors can predict the rates of violence across London for both victims and offenders. So what's the latest evidence? One of the strongest correlations found by the experts is the percentage of those out of work. The higher the percentage of those unemployed in our communities, the higher the rate of serious youth violence. They also found strong links between levels of violence and food insecurity, school absence, youth unemployment, and deprivation in general. All 10 of the boroughs with the highest rates of victims of serious violence have higher rates of child poverty than the London average. One of my biggest concerns now is that the pandemic has made worse many of these risk factors. For example, universal credit claims have risen by nearly 130%, with the highest increases in the top 5 boroughs for the rates of serious youth violence. Over a fifth of young Londoners are now unemployed. And perhaps most worryingly, the percentage of Londoners who have a high life satisfaction rating has fallen by 5% since 2019, the biggest fall since records began. Now, before I continue, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. When I highlight these conditions associated with violence, I'm not in any way excusing criminality. The strong link between crime and deprivation does not let criminals off the hook whatsoever. This is not an excuse for breaking the law. Most people growing up in poverty, no matter how desperate, never end up getting involved in serious violence. But any sensible society understands that it's in our own interest to remove the conditions that allow criminality to thrive, to provide positive opportunities for young Londoners who could otherwise be vulnerable to exploitation, and to give them hope for a brighter future. Surely, we must all want young Londoners to feel like they have a stake in society, rather than feeling so hopeless that they're willing to stake their lives for so little. Another clear pattern that can't be ignored from the analysis is the most common profile of those involved in violence. Here in London, 22% of the youth population are black, but they're significantly overrepresented as both victims and offenders. For homicide, 62% of victims under 25 and 65% of offenders are black Londoners. Black teenage boys are 6 times more likely to be killed by violence, 6 times, than white boys in our city. And when you count for population size, black Londoners are disproportionately represented as victims and offenders for all categories of serious violence. Now, of course, the vast majority, 99% of young black Londoners are not involved in violence in any way. They make a massive positive contribution to our city, something I see every day, from powering our creative economy to helping to keep our public services running. In other cities like Glasgow, where the demographics are very different, it's white young men who are more likely to be perpetrators as well as the victims of violence. That's because it's not skin colour that determines your chances of being a victim or an offender, but the societal and environmental factors I've already highlighted. The disproportionate rates of poverty, the disproportionate rates of unemployment, and the disproportionate rates of school exclusions. The issue of disproportionality is not always easy to talk about, but it's something that is negatively impacting all those from our black communities who are not directly involved, from young children to grandparents. So this is an issue we must both acknowledge and seek to address, not only in relation to violence affecting young people, but more broadly. And this means proactively tackling the structural barriers and, yes, racial inequality that black Londoners face, from housing and poverty to education and the workplace. Because it's clear that black communities are more likely to be living in poverty than white communities, that black children are more likely to be excluded from school, and that young black men are more likely to experience discrimination in the labour market. And this takes me to the work we're doing from City Hall, because I'm determined that we take action, not only to prevent violence through early intervention, but to achieve our wider objectives of making a city that is fairer, more equal, and more just for all Londoners. Let me start with London's Violence Reduction Unit, which was the first of its kind in England. Established in 2018, it's already made a huge difference to thousands of lives. And I want to thank Liv Peck, the director, and as Kirk said, the former leader of Lambeth Council, who's here this morning, as are her team. The Violence Reduction Unit brings together a team of specialists in health, education, local government, communities, youth services, and policing to effect genuine change. The core principle behind all its work is that violence is preventable, not inevitable, something I passionately believe. Rather than a classic top-down approach, the VRU is working with local communities most impacted by violence to ensure they have the tools and resources they need at a grassroots level. It's also ensuring that young people have a voice in the solutions to reducing violence through the Young People's Action Group, who are also here today. Next year alone, London's VRU will be providing mentoring, support, and positive opportunities for tens of thousands of young Londoners, not only helping to prevent violence now, but in the long term. The programme includes supporting teenagers who've witnessed domestic abuse, delivering high-intensity intervention for the children most at risk of getting involved in violence or exploitation, providing support for parents, carers, and mentors, and working closely with schools and colleges to promote the importance of education. This is all achieved through partnership with councils, the NHS, schools, charities, and others, working together with all those collectively who can bring about real change in London. The flagship programme is called My Ends. This is about taking a hyper-local, neighbourhood-level approach to reducing and preventing violence in crime hotspots. We know that violence tends to be concentrated on estates or small pockets of roads. The old approach of focusing programmes top down on entire boroughs or large parts of London does not work. So we're going local, investing £6 million in 8 consortiums across London, empowering local communities to help reduce violence in their neighbourhoods. Working with the VRU, City Hall is implementing many other programmes to support young Londoners. From the Young Londoners Fund, which has already provided positive opportunities to more than 100,000 young Londoners, to Sport Unites, which, like this place, is using the power of sport to improve lives, and to our Workforce Integration Network programme, which is supporting young black men into living wage employment. But we clearly need to do even more to help combat the negative consequences of the pandemic and to ensure more young Londoners can gain the opportunity to make the most of their talents. So I'm pleased today to announce that next year, over the course of just 12 months, we'll be stepping up our work with a package of measures that will support nearly 100,000 more young Londoners. Now, I know from my own life story the positive impact these kinds of programs can have, because I've seen how many young Londoners from deprived and disadvantaged communities often reach key crossroads in their lives. And without the necessary support at these crucial moments, they can take decisions and they can take paths that not only harm their own future, but negatively impact the rest of society. Growing up on a council estate in South London, like the one around here, I saw firsthand how this can happen. I've witnessed these key moments in people's lives. Some of my school friends were given opportunities to develop and gain confidence through family and community programs, sport and other activities, whether it was boxing at the local gym or playing football at the weekends, or access to high-quality apprenticeships and skills training. Whereas others, with just as much potential, didn't have the same positive influences in their lives and were sucked into a life of criminal gangs. My ultimate ambition for London is that every young Londoner is given the helping hand they need to reach their potential and to contribute positively to our society. I remember President Obama once saying that we must never tag young people as future criminals, but reach out to them as future citizens. This is my approach in London, which is why I'm determined to put young Londoners at the very heart of our recovery efforts, utilising all the resources and levers at our disposal. Let me finish with this. We have a huge task ahead to reduce violence in our city, with the impact of the pandemic making things even harder. There is no quick fix, but I'm hopeful and I am optimistic, because as I've outlined today, we do know what the ingredients for the solution are, and we've already shown that we can, even in the face of extremely challenging conditions, start to turn the tide. I'm convinced that with the combination of our new crime and policing plan, all the support we're providing from City Hall, putting young people first, and more help from the government, ensuring communities are involved, and working together as a city, we can and we will make a meaningful difference, stopping the violence before it occurs, preventing young Londoners from taking the wrong path, and expanding opportunity for all, so that we can create a fairer, safer city for everyone. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. It just remains for me to firstly thank the Mayor for what was a really impressive speech. I think these things are always really sobering, and I think a reminder of the challenges we face. But I also felt it was a really inspirational speech in that there's a plan in place and there's action happening. And I've just got to say it's good that at least the Mayor of London has more idea and plans than our current Prime Minister, but I better not go there. But I thought it was an excellent speech. I also wanted to thank Yvonne for sharing with her, the fantastic, inspirational story and what the work you're doing. It's just truly amazing. So thank you. Obviously Sarah as well for sharing with you. But otherwise, thank you everybody for coming and everybody watching online. Huge thanks to all the people who've helped put the event together. I know these things take a lot of effort, and especially the team at BPT that have worked very tirelessly in the last 2 days for putting it all together. So thank you all.